All my nice words didn't make it onto the recording. You know what I said. You guys all know what I said. Okay, anyways, go for it, Jenny.
Thank you for that great introduction. I am only Clutch because I'm connected to ITSIC. So you will hear from him soon. I won't take up too much time here. Yes, I can't actually. Yes, you can hear me? See me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I stopped hearing you for a bit. It got choppy, Jenny. I don't.
Okay.
Same feeling. Was that the same for everyone else? I'm not sure.
Oh, it's probably just because I went to full screen and my computer went a little crazy. But you can see my screen right now, right?
Yep, I see your screen. I see you, and I think that you were saying you're Clutch because you have all this support from ITSIC. I think you were like trying to give him some credit.
Yes.
I heard that.
Yes. Sorry that got butchered, but glad you got the gist of it. Well, I'll get started so that we can make the most of our time here. I'm going to quickly go over the AWS startup team and the resources that we offer to all of the teams that are part of Viterbi Startup Garage, as well as teams in the network. So first, AWS is Amazon Web Services, as I'm sure you know, and we provide cloud infrastructure services to very large companies, but mostly actually very small companies and startups. And every company here that you see, you may think is a very large enterprise business, but had started out as a small company and where you are now. And we have grown and built with them on AWS. And the reason startups choose AWS is that you can move faster, scale easily, and manage costs. And Itzik later will explain how that's done exactly, but I just wanted to give you a little preview here. We provide core services such as storage, compute, database, networking, and CDN. And we have over 200, this number keeps growing, specialized services for all of your needs. And this is just a sample here of the different types of services or the categories that we provide. The startup team, of which I'm a part, is the AWS startup team, and we are made up of founders, CTOs, startup execs, and we're here to help you grow your business and get the most out of AWS. I'm going to quickly go over how we do this. One is through credits and training. Two is technical support. 3 is go-to-market resources, and 4 is business mentorship. So for the credits, everyone who is a part of Viterbi Startup Garage has access to $25,000 in AWS credits to be used over 2 years. And this covers almost all AWS services. So definitely take advantage of that and apply through talking to Arcelia. It also comes with 1 year of business support up to $5,000. Actually, I think that number is correct. Business support is our second tier of customer service, meaning it is better than the most basic tier and better than the next tier up, which is developer support. And then business support is what this is. And it's 24/7 access to our support engineers, and they can answer any of your questions that you may have as you're building, or if you have questions around documentation, even account questions, they can help you with that. And with this package, there's also 80 credits for self-paced labs. Labs are basically trainings that you can use to help you learn about AWS. If you're not a part of a Viterbi Startup Garage, we will send out a link later, or maybe it's already been sent to you, of the founders package that is available to you. And that is $1,000 in AWS credits for this community. The link is here, which you'll get the presentation after this call, and we'll also send out the link. So you don't have to worry about getting it here. And then for the Startup Garage, we also do one-on-one technical sessions with the AWS Solutions Architect. It is a Solutions Architect, so you would get one-on-one time with him to walk through your architecture and talk through strategic ways to scale, make sure you're set up correctly, that you are doing everything right to put yourself in a place to succeed. And Itzik can talk more about that too. We have go-to-market resources that we offer to startups on a one-on-one basis. I won't go over these right now, but say as an example that we're talking to during office hours and you need help acquiring customers in a certain space. We can go back to our network and think about different customers that would be a good fit and then make a connection for you to that customer. That's just an example of kind of the ad hoc resources that we provide. Lastly, there is also during these one-on-one sessions, usually I'll participate or we can bring in someone else from the team to provide mentorship on topics such as fundraising, pitch decks, hiring, and this is drawn from our experience from being at startups for so long and investing in startups. So you can certainly take advantage of that as well. And this is my email address, jcwong@amazon.com. And with that, I'll turn it over to Itzik, who will talk about how to get started on AWS.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, let me share my screen. Screen 2, it says to do. And share. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So just before jumping into the deck itself and what it's all about, just a little bit about an extra thing about our team. As Jenny mentioned, most of us are ex-founders. So I've been with AWS for 4 years now, and before that I've been in startup. I've been a CTO, founding teams and such, and I'm also part of the healthcare and life sciences team here. So if you have a specific question afterwards you want to discuss in depth, please let me know. And I'll jump into our deck here. So this is something that I've been tasked to put about 4 years ago about common questions that we get from early stage startup founders, and how do we usually go about those questions. And those changed over time. I guess I'm the one admitting everyone to the room right now. And over time we change it and we add things and we omitted a few things, but what we're going to talk about today doesn't mean that's the all of it. You can always come and ask specific questions, and I'm going to add maybe a few at the end. And I want to keep some time for a question if anyone has here. So I'll try to go as quick as I can around it. And if you have a question, please feel free to interrupt and say like, hey, I have a question. I want to keep it like informal if possible.
Also, I'll get better at noticing the waiting room. I'm sorry. I'm just like not a strength of mine. Full admittance.
All right, cool. So I'll ignore that for now. Cool. All right, so let's jump in. The first thing, it happens very common when I talk to founders, and it's a lot of time the people that play, sometimes the COO, the CTO, they want to know, like, what do I spend money on in the long run? Like, how do I know? Like, some people come to me 2 years afterwards, they're running things like, I have some resources here, I don't even know what they are and how much, that cost me. They're just here. I wrote this short blog post about how to set, to create budgets, especially when you are using credits. And I can go and do a little demo here for that. So let's see if I can get out of the presentation and go here. So if you go to your AWS console, I just want to do like a very short demo to show like it's very simple to manage those kind of things. So the only thing I have to do is go to my account here, and I'm going to my account. Under, if you have credits, under credits, you'll see your credits. So I'm just going to click on that, right? I should not have any credits right now. This is my personal account, so I don't have any credits, but I can create myself budgets by clicking on budgets. I made myself a monthly budget. So for example, I said that if my budget is $10 and I want to get alerted if, you know, something happens. So let's see what I set up for myself here. As you can see, I don't spend a lot of money on my personal account. I just use it for all my backups. And I can also show you.
Itzik, there was a quick request to see if you can make your browser screen a little bit bigger.
Control plus.
Thank you.
Yeah, my thing here is a bit stuck with something here, but go back. So just show you, like, if I want to create a budget, it's pretty simple and something that you should all do. I'm going to create myself a cost budget. And I'm going to call it like monthly budget. And I can say, like, say, you know, $500. And I can do by specific things. I can even do tags. And that's really important part. If you, when you're using your infrastructure, you should tag your info. I don't really have anything to tag in my account here, but when you have EC2 or RDS or Lambda functions, I think just tag them. And then you can do things by tags. You can, for example, one tag would be environment. You can do environment production, environment development, environment staging, and then you can create budgets according to that and learn from the cost explorer afterwards, like how much you spend per environment. And then in environment, you can do project. For example, I have a project for a web service and a project maybe for a background worker and a project for doing something else, maybe machine learning. I can tag them in that tag, and then afterwards I can see how much I spend on that. What's the important thing that when you're using credits is to make sure that this checkbox is not checked. Because if it's checked, the budget always going to be showing as zero because it's going to take into account that credits are being applied. So if you uncheck that, make sure it's not checked, credits will be accounted as if you don't use credits at all, just so you can know how much you actually are using. And then I can say, okay, when, let's say I get 50% of my budgeted account, I want you to let me know. And I can put here my email. And so that means if I get an email, I put here, like, for example, my budget is $500. And if I get to actual usage more than $250, I want to get notification. If that happens in the first week of the month, I might be in trouble. But if it happens in the last week of the month or just like after mid of the month, I might be fine. And it shouldn't be a big deal. Just something to keep in mind. Cool. I just wanted kind of to show you that's something you can do and you probably should pay attention to, and everyone should do that. Part of the presentation will have that link, so you can go and click on that. It's just about how to do that. Cool. So go back to our little presentation here. So now I get, a few common questions. There's actually more questions from those, but those are very common. Like one, should I build my web stack, or I build my web stack this way, is that fine? Then how do I choose the right database? Should I start with Postgres? Should I do MongoDB? What should I do? And then how do I build a secure and compliant solution? Or just security is really important to me. What should I be thinking about, or what maybe I'm missing in my security? So kind of two patterns I want to talk about in building web stacks. And there's other ones, as well. Like, for example, I'm not going to mention here, like if you just want to use virtual machines directly, like EC2, for example, in AWS, and just install things on that. There's other patterns for that, but feel free, to set up time one-on-one if you want to discuss those. So two patterns I want to talk about today is using some sort of a container orchestrator, such as ECS, which is the Elastic Container Service in AWS. It's a way to orchestrate Docker containers. And then adding to that Fargate. Fargate is a technology that allows you to run containers kind of in a serverless mode, where instead of like deciding on what type of machine it needs to run, you just tell us like, this is the amount of memory and CPU that my container needs. And now AWS, it's your problem to go and find me those and launch my containers that way. So because I don't want to think about that type of infrastructure. I just want to work on the container level. And then also to manage your infrastructure as code. So instead of going to the AWS console and point and clicking things, and if you need to change things and maybe you have duplicate environment in different places and go and change things, every time, you can treat your infrastructure as code. So you deploy, like the same thing you deploy code, you deploy your infrastructure with a command that comes from your code. So that CDK is for. And CDK stands for the Cloud Development Kit. It's pretty new. I would really encourage you to take a look and start thinking about how do I manage my infrastructure as code. The other approach would be the serverless way of doing things, where I don't want to manage any networking at all. When I run containers or virtual machines, I'm still responsible to run the network, like how my IP ranges needs to be. Do I need a load balancer? Do I need to scale things up? So instead of doing that, the serverless takes all of that away. So with AWS, it will look like something with API gateway or GraphQL endpoint with AppSync and stuff. So the second pattern would be using something like Amplify. And let me kind of talk a bit about both ECS and then Fargate and then Amplify. So when we're talking about ECS, I go and define an application and I can choose then, do I want to run my application on EC2 directly on virtual machines, or do I want to use the Fargate technology, right? So that's really up to you. The reason to use EC2 directly is if you need control on how the infrastructure, or what instances you need to get. It's really important to you what type of hardware is backing up your things. But for most cases, when you're talking about web stacks, it's really not important, right? It's just like, give me something that can run my web application. I don't really care as long as it has enough memory and CPU. So that's what Fargate would be. Just like, I'm creating a container image. Usually we just deploy that to ECR, which is the Elastic Container Registry. And then tells AWS, you go and launch things for me. And then the combo of those, I'm going to use ECS as the orchestrator, and then I'm going to use Fargate as a technology to make it serverless, and CDK to manage my infrastructure as code. So instead of doing the point and click. There's links here, like how you do it yourself. There's like one of my team member made these like videos, like how to create environment like in CDK, ECS, Fargate in 12 minutes, right? So you can just follow that and see how that could work. And if you need extra help with that, please let us know. Outside of ECS, I just want to mention that we have another orchestrator called EKS, which is the same thing, just using the Kubernetes way. If you're not familiar with Kubernetes and if you haven't done it before, and if you have a small team, probably not the best way to go to Kubernetes to start with. ECS would be much easier, but just to know that you have that option as well. All right, so we talked about ECS and Fargate and CDK. Now just go and talk a little bit about Amplify. And Amplify is kind of three things. The Amplify framework consists of like a CLI. With the CLI, you can go and say, I want to create AWS resources. You can say CLI add, data store, CLI add API, and it actually create the right AWS services on your behalf. And it's a very opinionated framework. It creates things in a very specific way. But if you want to do it differently, you might not want to use the CLI. The other part is the libraries. It's a client-side libraries that you can use, right, to integrate with the services. It just makes talking to different services very easy, and it has a lot of code wrappers, which makes your life as developers much easier. And then it has also have like UI components. For example, if you use something like Cognito, it can help you with creating these screens for authentication, authorization, and other kind of cool things. With the console itself, like that's the UI that you go to AWS, web console, as I did a moment ago with just to show you the billing. You just go connect your repo, and then you configure like how you want to build things, and you deploy your app. It's pretty simple, but you have to remember this is a very opinionated framework. It means it might not work for everyone. And if you have already something up and running, adopting Amplify can be hard sometimes, at least the CLI part of it. The libraries, it's much easier because it's just like helping you writing code easier from client side to server side using AWS services. Different components that you can use in Amplify. It can deal with authentication, PubSub, doing storage, analytics, and you name it, like things that you're thinking about. But you see here, we are not talking about specific services, right? I'm talking about, for example, I want an API. It will ask, okay, what type of API do you want to use? I want to have a RESTful API. Do you want to use a GraphQL API? By supplying what you want, it will create the right AWS resources for you without asking you which service do you want to use. So again, as I mentioned, very opinionated. Cool. So I'm done with that part. Before I continue, anyone have questions about web stacks and the way that you're doing things today?
I do have a question. Is there specific to Amplify, is there a specific like tech stack or languages that it supports?
Yeah, so in the client side, it integrates with, like, say, React or Vue or, a lot of, different types of like client side applications. So it means JavaScript, right? Because we're talking about client side applications. On server side, just create services on our behalf, right? And then on those services, you can do a lot of different things, but usually just, it creates plumbing in a way that you write client-side code and connect it to services. So for example, you want to use a database, you can use DynamoDB directly from your client side, right? With the right authentication authorization, your application can use a database directly without any APIs in between. So no need to write a server-side code.
So that those APIs or GraphQL that are generated, those are for the backend, correct?
Yeah, so if you choose GraphQL, it will create a GraphQL endpoint in the integration, but you could go to then your GraphQL endpoint being created and then do different integration that you want to build.
I see. All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Let me jump into databases. And databases here will be just like, just click on this. All right. Database will be just like one slide here, kind of to describe different types of databases we have, but we can have that as a conversation as well. So you can see like there's different types of databases, anywhere from relational to ledger to in-memory and others. And I get a lot of time questions, what database should I use, or what I'm using right now, is that the right way? One example would be customer using like MongoDB or DynamoDB as a NoSQL database because they think they build an API-based application. They have like a client-side, like say in React or React Native, and then they want to build a RESTful API or GraphQL. And then they said, I don't really need a relational database because it's all API-based. So NoSQL seemed like the best option for that. But sometimes you miss some things that like there is the application that you build, maybe the feature set that you're being asked to build. But then there's other things that you might need to do later on. For example, do reporting, right? If you need to create reporting, creating reporting on a NoSQL database is pretty difficult. Or any other kind of things that might be more relational and not fitting to your API for your application. So something to keep in mind when you choose your first database. And what I've seen that being so far successful for startups, at least in the early stage, is to use like some sort of a SQL-based database, like say Postgres or MySQL to start with, because it's pretty simple to understand. If you want to create reporting, it's easy, just SQL queries. You think about performance, okay, I'm just going to create read replica, so it's not going to affect anything. And it can extend for a long period of time until I actually need to do something special. And then might come the time, okay, how do I split now my database from a regular SQL to other databases that are more specialized? But something really to consider once would be the nature of your data and then the access patterns to your data, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But so if you want to use relational database, you have RDS with different engines such as like MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, MS SQL, and Oracle. And also you have the flavors of Postgres and MySQL in something called Aurora. And Aurora just like changed the way that those engines works in the cloud to be more efficient. And then you get, if you need like a data warehouse, a columnar database, you can use Redshift. That's more if you need to do BI. And again, most of the time in your early stages, just using your RDS would be more than enough until you actually need a data warehouse. And then specifically on AWS, you have DynamoDB as a managed NoSQL database and DocumentDB, which is compatible with MongoDB drivers. But you can do MongoDB yourself, or you can use something like Atlas, using for MongoDB Atlas for running your own MongoDB. That's totally great. If you need to run in-memory databases, but you want to cache some of the queries that you get against your database to get performance boost, you can use Elasticache, and then you can choose Redis or Memcached. Or if you just want a Redis because you want to create some sort of a pub-sub inside of your application, and because it's really leveraging Redis, that's great too. Or if you want to use something like Rescue or other things that might leverage Redis, definitely you can do that. We just got time series to be globally available. So it's a time stream database. So if you collect a lot of data that needs to be set in as a time series, you have that option now. For example, let's say you build something with IoT and you get a lot of messages and you want to keep them in order and to be querying things in that manner, you have that option now. For a wide column, if you're using Cassandra, now we have a managed Cassandra if you need that. For GraphDB, we have Neptune, and for a ledger, we have the QLDB. A lot of customers I talk to, when they want to use something like a ledger, they just go to the blockchain approach because they need the ledger part of it, but they don't really need the blockchain for the financial part of it. So you have those two options. You can do with AWS just a ledger database, which just being exactly what you would want from the blockchain. So for example, if you're like in insurance claims and you want to keep everything tracked there, or any other medical things, or just even you creating your own currency, on your own platform, and you just want to keep track of things, you can use a ledger database for that. But if you do want to run a blockchain, we have a managed blockchain service as well. So you can go full blockchain if you need that, and not, again, building it yourself. Cool. So that's what's kind of very high-level databases and how do you choose them. Any specific question that you have, or kind of challenges that you have today with your databases? And bringing those questions actually is good for everyone else here, because they can hear that actually other people going through the same challenges. So anyone kind of volunteer to talk about their database challenges?
I can say something. So I guess in our application, we've kind of we have a document approach. So it's something like Google Docs and stuff. And so some things aren't exactly clear how we're going to build them out in the beginning. So we have to store a lot of pages, right? And I've noticed that we've kind of needed a little bit more flexibility in how we define our models and how we might have to add new fields in the process that might make it difficult to go back and change the columns on the database. So I kind of wish I had chosen on something like a MongoDB database for like the pages for the storage, and maybe something relational for the user accounts and that kind of information. So in that case, that's one of the challenges that I'm facing now, is how do I maybe move forward from here on out? Do I just drop the tables that I have now and convert them to Mongo, or do I just kind of keep pushing forward the way I have it now,
I mean, I would say there's a balance. Thinking, for example, in my last startup, we started with the MongoDB because we had a very specific solution that made sense as a document database. But then we pivoted, but we still have a lot of that, code written. We didn't want to change to something else. Like I think a SQL would have been a much better approach, like say MySQL or Postgres. But because we didn't do that, we paid in the long run for that. So that's another decision you have to make. Is that going to hurt you for the long run? And I do find in the beginning, you change a lot of things. You kind of like, oh, doesn't work, or I need to add more features, and tables are more important, you know. And you think, oh, if I go schemaless, I'm going to make my life easier because it doesn't matter. I can change things on the fly. But in the long run, it might not. Right? You might not have order of things. If you want to create some reporting of things or just like do queries, then you have to have like backward compatibility to all the things that you didn't have in your schema, and you have to take into account what happens if I don't have those fields. What do I do then? I know it's kind of like annoying when you deploy a version. If you add a column, for example, and you have to pre-populate that with null values or zeros or whatever that needs to be as defaults, it might create even downtime a little bit, because if you need to stop, writes to your database to just update that. But I find that is, at least in the beginning stages, before you have traction, before you actually have a big system that's working, I don't find as a big deal as the disadvantages of not getting things in an easy way. Adding a little bit for like, maybe downtime in deployment again, when you're beginning, then spending a lot of engineering times thinking about how do I deal with schemaless when I need now to do different queries. And, in the beginning, you want to be as obsessed as possible on metrics. Like, is that working? Is that using this thing correctly? And you need to validate that data. And doing it again with a schemaless database or NoSQL, it's just harder to do that. Again, those are kind of things that you should have the business objectives drive the technology, and not the opposite. Not, this is, I think, the better technology, and that's how I'm going to drive things.
Yeah, I agree. I think the original advice that I was given was start with relational, because it's the most like flexible in terms of like, or it's the most easiest to just kind of dive in, and like if you need to change, you could change later. But I'm kind of finding that that's maybe not as easy as they told me it was.
Yeah, and sometimes a hybrid approach it depends on this and the use case, right? And again, if you need a one-on-one time to talk, sometimes what you think, well, most of my stuff, it just works really well with my relational database, but some things do not. And sometimes you split those things out and say, like, okay, this now makes sense for me to have a Mongo, for example, because it's like a very specific use case. And I still have to think about, okay, what happens when I need to do reporting on those? So I have to build like an ETL process to bring this data back to a relational source, or, so I can actually do those things.
Yeah.
Like, you have to think about what the business needs and then find what the technology that will drive it.
I have a quick question related to this. So as I understand it, with something like a NoSQL database, I can scale, I think the term was horizontally, right? I can get more servers just to keep posting documents. What is the equivalent for a relational database? Like, would I also get a new database if, like, let's say I started getting billions and billions of entries on a table and it becomes really, really heavy? Is that just, you just got to switch at that point, or, where's the balance there?
Yeah, so getting billions and billions of things in a database by itself, it's an amazing challenge, right? To have, regardless of what type of database you're going to use. If you're using something like a non-relational database and you're thinking about scaling horizontally, that means there's some sort of a sharding of the data, right? So you have one primary database and a lot of secondaries, right? And all of them have exactly the same data, which can become inefficient when you get to certain scale, talking about the billions and different sizes. And then when you start to split the data and the data doesn't exist in all the nodes, right? That's kind of, again, a challenge. You can do that the same thing with a relational database. So with relational database, and again, talking about access patterns, if you find yourself there's some writes, but mostly reads, then you have read replicas with relational databases, right? So it's like the data going to be replicated to multiple nodes, and they're just going to split the traffic between those. And that's going to be helping you up to certain scale.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking about, really big data challenges, sometimes we have to really think about multi-tier solution. Can be, what kind of caching engine can I put in front of my database? Can I put a kind of like a heartbeat system when the write they don't go directly to the database. They go to a queue first, and then I have a heartbeat system that can read from the queue. But depending on the performance of the database, I'm never going to write faster than the database can handle. And if things need to sit in the queue for a little bit longer, while I have a peak, that's okay, right? So that's another decision you can make. But usually, until you get to these extreme situations, right? And again, getting to those extreme situations, you're in a good place. That means you have a business.
Yeah.
You have a business with traction that needs to have more interesting solutions. Then when you start to think about different type of engines.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone? Any challenges? Or maybe learning? You try one and like, oh, I should not have done that. I have a lot of those. I should not have done that.
Can you share one?
One of them was like, using MongoDB and not using something like a SQL to start with. That was a challenge. Another one, running a database myself instead of using a managed service, because I thought, there's a little margin between doing it yourself and having a managed database. And I thought, I can save like $50 a month for my startup. But then when I'm thinking about all the things that I need to do now, I need to take control of the backups, and I need to take control of like what happens if that fails and all of the configurations, right? Because of that, I spent so many hours, and the $50 was like, I already spent it, 10 times fold on just my time, right? It's another kind of mistake that I have done.
I have a question that's it sounds specific to databases, but just a general AWS question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So we have a situation where it's it's built on a game engine. It's a little, at the moment, it's a little heavier than something we can run on WebAssembly or WebGL. So it for certain client machines, they can download the executable and it will run on their laptop or phone. But for more dated machines that we don't want a laggy experience for, we are looking to host the application on an instance.
And stream the visuals to the application?
The question is, I guess on our end, if this is even a reasonable way to run, say something that might even be a free application for a certain suite of users, whether we could ever hope to break even on server costs if we did decide to do things that way.
Yeah, if you think about gaming, it's a very interesting thing by itself. And, that would be a different conversation to look about, what is the ROI on things, right? Like if I need to use servers, and how should I use them? Or let's say I have to use a server directly, like something like an EC2. How many cores can I use, and how can I utilize that to squeeze as much as I can to put as many of players on that, so then it makes sense, financially to do that, right? And at different types of scales, you can do things. There are different ways to save costs as well. It's really depending on what mechanism do you need to have to run the game. And we have different services, managed services that can help with that, or there's different approaches. You can do it yourself, but then we have to talk about how do you manage all of that. So let's say we're talking about 1 million users right now, that 1 million gamers that you need to run servers for. It's very different than if you need it for, just like a few dozens of like online gamers, right? So there's probably be different solutions for the two scenarios.
Got it. Yeah, it'd be great to talk more about that.
Yeah, sure thing. And if you need time, just let Jenny and myself know that you need some time, and we can schedule like one-on-one conversations.
Great.
Yeah, just to be clear, I put it in the chat, but there are office hours available. There's a link. It's for tomorrow between the hours of 12:30 to 3 for VSG teams to sign up for. And then there is a wait list that can be expanded for any other participant on this workshop. So if you guys do have some very, super specific questions or things you guys like to get deeper and dive deeper into, and you don't want to do it right now, tomorrow is a good time. And then you can also get waitlisted and work something. So it'll just be a more organized approach, easy for you guys, for you and Jenny to figure that out.
Yeah, and don't be shy. If you just want to spend some time and talk about things, even just validate what you've built, just making sure that everything looks in place. Or even if it's not AWS specifically, you just like say, I have other products, like I use MongoDB, or I use, third-party, log solutions, or whatever that you're using, and you want to discuss that and see that, does it seems reasonable? Is other option? What other customers are doing, to get better performance or better, cost savings? Just let us know. Really happy to help you out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that.
Cool. Let me jump for the last topic here for today. So a lot of question that gets about security. Security should be the first interest of everyone. From securing your own accounts, your own environment, wherever it, and again, it doesn't matter which service provider you're using, but you need to protect your own account. Like, what's the access to things? And then how do I making sure that moving forward with my environment, I'm keeping it secure and I'm keeping track that it still keep myself secure. Because in day one or day zero that you're setting up something, okay, this looks secure, everything in place. But how do you track that over time? You onboard new engineers and they're not breaking what you built to be secure, right? Because that's very easy to do. Or you do something, you're like, oh, I need to open ports right now because I'm, I've been asked, there's a bug, and I'm sitting in a coffee place and I forget to close those afterwards. It happens, right? So just how do you make sure, moving forward those things? So kind of I split those kind of security and compliance into 5 different categories here. First is the identity and access management, to get to your account or to application, how do you authenticate and authorize people, right? So something to keep in mind. And then how do I kind of investigate what's going on right now with the detective controls, right? Maybe I'll mention a few here that can be very useful. For example, Amazon Guard Duty, it's a machine learning based engine that looks at your account and look for anomalies and just seeing things that looks weird. It should not usually look like that, and give you a report on that. Or CloudTrail. So everything you do in AWS, you create a resource, you delete a resource, you update a resource in AWS. Behind the scene, it's API calls. And all of those are going to be logged in CloudTrail. And CloudTrail keeps you, by default, all of your trails for 90 days. So you can see in the last 90 days who did what and when. But if you want to have more than that, you can say, hey, I want to store those on a long-term storage so I can investigate it. So if you have saying something like you have to follow the HIPAA guidelines, that might be a very important part of it. Another service there that really important and fall into that AWS config. So every configuration that you have through your services, going to be stored in AWS config, and all of the changes as well. So you have all the configuration changes there. But AWS config also come with something called config rules. And config rules, what you can say, here's a resource, and this resource needs to have this specific configuration to be compliant. And everything that I've read from that configuration, I want to mark it as non-compliant. An example, let's say you need to follow HIPAA or anything that requires you to have an encryption, and someone launching a resource, say an RDS or EC2 with no encryption enabled, in the drives itself, you can mark it automatically as non-compliant, right? And then you can automate things if something is non-compliant, send me an email, or specific resources that are non-compliant, and you can say, hey, I want to delete those resources or isolate them because I don't want it to be available because they're non-compliant. So that allows you to set up compliance from day one and keep tracking and even automate to keep this compliance moving forward. So something to keep in mind if you're under kind of very sensitive workloads. Then you have how do I protect my infrastructure moving, on a regular basis? One thing AWS Shield. AWS Shield, everyone gets that. So for example, if you use a load balancer or CloudFront, you already have, by default, DDoS protection. You don't have to build anything. So that comes automatically for everyone. But if you want to add more things, you can have a WAF to your web application or firewall to your load balancer or to CloudFront and other things. So you can go and create different rules or more, restrict. In the data protection, you can encrypt the data. You can use something like KMS, managing keys in KMS, so you don't have to build anything. But if you need something even more than that, because of compliance programs, you can use cloud HSM that gives you an HSM in the cloud that you can manage keys in there. And you can, certificate manager also allows you to create certificates for yourself, so you don't have to go and create them with third parties and bring them in. You create one, and if you use a load balancer, again, or CloudFront, they will just be shown in the dropdown, and those are for free. And yeah, I did talk about config rules there. Another thing is that if you need to keep PIIs, right, in your S3, for example, and you know that a specific bucket should have that because or I'm expecting to have that, and I have encryption there, and it's all good. But other buckets should not have PIIs because I don't encrypt those. You can run Macy to keep scanning those, and it will make sure that if there are PIIs, it will let you know. Right, on a regular basis, like the more data you put in, it keeps on scanning. You're just using machine learning to see if you have anything that can be readable and can be used by others. And there's tons of other different things that you can do. It really depends on your use case. I just want to kind of open your mind into like possibilities and maybe question that you might have, or things that you might want to ask yourself, maybe I should do that. For example, encryption. Encryption at rest doesn't cost you anything. And if it's a checkbox in a lot of services, why not do that? Right? There's no reason not to enable that, unless there's like some sort of application that cannot deal with that, like or mostly like encryption in transit. Like if you have like super old legacy application that cannot deal with SSL or TLS, then maybe I would agree. I mean, but no one builds a website today, for example, with no HTTPS, right? The browser tells you like it's not secure, so customers will not want to use your website if you don't have HTTPS, which makes sense for everyone. So my point there, if you can enable encryption in transit and encryption at rest, there's no reason why you shouldn't, right? Unless there's like very odd reason for that. Cool. And outside of what we talked about today, I'm just going to out of the slides here. There's a lot of things that you might want to talk about that not specifically we talked today. Like for example, machine learning. How should I go by my machine learning workloads? Should I run them on EC2? Should I run them on some sort of a managed orchestration tool? Should I have like AWS has managed completely fully baked APIs that can do a lot of the work for you? So you don't need to know anything. You don't have to be a data scientist to do that. If you need to do workloads around IoT, perhaps, or if you have a compliant specific thing, like again, talk about HIPAA, high trust, or any of the ISOs that you need to follow, feel free to reach out and talk to us, so we can help out. If you want to run something with life sciences, maybe you need to do like genomics pipelines or drug discovery, and what services should you use, and what would be helpful to, to accelerate your time to get results. There's different ways to do that. AWS is like about 200 services now, and my job here is to help you to navigate and find what was the right one for your use case, and and go that way. Cool. So just want to open it up to kind of general kind of questions here, and as mentioned, tomorrow there are some office hours. You can register, but there's a waiting list if needed. And then if you randomly think about, oh, now I want to ask questions, feel free to reach out whenever you need us. It's not like just today or tomorrow, right? We're here for you whenever you think it's the time for you, to leverage us.
Thank you, Itzik. Now, I want to stress how just, like giving and thoughtful both Itzik and Jenny are with their time, especially to the teams at the garage, but even our broader network. If you guys are interested, I would encourage you to take advantage of their support. 200, different types of ways AWS can be a solution for you is a lot to navigate, especially if you're new to the services themselves and you don't want to spend too much. I mean, time is one of our most valuable assets. And I think a lot of startup founders find themselves, wasting so much time building things in ways that are not scalable, or, from the ground up just start to cause them more headaches, and then they have to go and rebuild that. And I think that if you guys are in that process right now, just even bouncing off what it is that you're doing off of EatSeek and Jenny so that you can kind of get a little bit of a better idea as to how to take that first step forward. Here's a perfect opportunity for you guys to connect. I will let anyone else who has any questions. We have about 5 more minutes left on this thing that we're doing. Anyone else have any questions for EatSeek?
Yes,
Or
I'm looking at
Jenny.
questions. I'm looking at questions now on the list here. So yes, we're gonna make the slides available. Let's see if there's anything.
Down at the, but that was the only question up at the
Yeah, I'm
top.
scrolling down.
There's one.
I was looking to validate my technical
Yeah, that one.
skills and get experience developing and maintaining an AWS-based application with the Certified Developer Associate certification.
Yes. So there are different, obviously, certifications. So I'm certified with 3 of those. I have the SA Associate, SA Pro, and the Developer Associate. I would say if you want to take the Developer Associate, it's really useful to have the SA Associate first, because there's a lot of things that are going to be mentioned afterwards in the Developer Associate that just makes things more clear. You can do it without it, but building things might kind of be weird in a way of like there's a lot of concept might not be familiar. You don't really need those certification. I mean, to build things, you can just go and again, if you need a specific ask about building specific things, I'm happy to guide you to where to go. But if some people really like certifications, and you know, it's great. But if you don't feel like you need that as part of your business and it doesn't add anything to your business to get certified, let me know what your specific questions are, and I can navigate you like to the actual studies and maybe workshops that can accelerate your knowledge. The exams don't really help you to be better at building things. It's just checking that you know the basics of certain concepts.
Are
But
the
it will make you an amazing developer on AWS.
all right? Are the exams included with the perks that we got, or is that something that we'd have to like pay for separately?
The credits do not, the exams, the credits do not cover exams, but we can go internally see what's available. I got those questions before and see if there's anything else we can help with.
Okay.
Also, I see a repeated question about getting access to EatSeek and some of his time. And so the best way to do that is through Jenny. Her email is like littered throughout, but it's jcwong@amazon.com. She's the gatekeeper for all things good. So if you guys are interested, if you're a VSG team, I really encourage you. There's 2 slots still available tomorrow for office hours. And then you can also just add yourself to the wait list. It's probably the easiest way to, just kind of get on a calendar with them. Otherwise, jcwong@amazon.com is the email that you guys should use.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So I was trying to sign up for to benefit from the credit. I selected business support, but then it told me, and I confirmed, but I saw a page that was saying it was $100 per month or something. Is it normal for now? And it's going to be taken care of by the credit?
Yes. So when you after you apply for the credits, obviously they're going to be deposited to your account, and they also going to deposit business support credits to your account, and the operations team will upgrade your account automatically to business level support, right? Because they have to do it in the backend. So if you have it today reverted to be basic before applying for the credits, or if you already applied for the credits, they should do that. The way business support works, with credit or without credits for that, it costs $100 a month minimum, or 10% of your usage. So as long as you spend less than $1,000, it's always going to be $100. And the credits that you get, this $100 go against this specific pool of credits that you get. And those are separate from the credits that you get for usage. Okay. So you get 25K for usage and 5K for business support.
So I think I did, I'm sure. I selected business support when I did that. Should I go back and change that to basic?
Have you already applied for the credits?
I just did like 1 minute ago.
Okay, so yeah, reverted back to basic. The ops team should upgrade you to business support. The only thing to make sure, sometimes it doesn't work. If your credit card on file is expired or not valid, then the process of upgrading you to business support doesn't work. So just make sure beforehand that it's valid.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I've noticed in the past that, people, it wasn't applied to their account.
Makes sense. All right. Thanks.
Cool. Any other question? I know that we're at time, but if anyone has another kind of quick question.
Don't be shy. Or be shy, whatever.
Yeah.
Why am I bullying people? Oh, did I hear so? Is that Jenny?
Oh, I just unmuted in case
Yeah,
someone had a question, but yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So the startups that funds that you just put out, are going to be available in December, January, for starting, or has the deadline passed for those?
So EdStart is for EdTech teams. And so are you an EdTech, education technology company?
Yes.
Oh, wow, perfect. I do not know when that starts exactly, since that is not part of our team. I can do a little digging for you on when that starts. For EdStart, it might be a rolling application, but I can confirm that. And then for the Alexa Next Stage Fund or Next Stage Accelerator, I'll have to confirm that as well. I don't know when this
Okay. I'll send you an email from my US email.
The next stage is the sixth
Yes,
stage
sorry, that
of
was my
the
Alexa.
launch.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so I think in the interest of everyone's time, I will just thank you guys once again for being so generous with your time. And I, again, just encourage you guys, anyone who's on, to utilize this offering through AWS. You guys always come through. I super appreciate it. The last time was in person though, so hopefully the next time will be in person and I can.
That would be nice. That would be great.
We can do that lunch again. So usually this happens at the garage with lunch and it's really nice and fun. And so we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, hopefully next year.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys' face. All right, bye everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lucy. Bye-bye.